Welcome to The Itinerant Preacher, the podcast that provides spiritual food and motivation to sustain you on your road of life. In our last episode, we discussed God declaring his name of I Am and what all that entailed about his identity. Today we're going to talk about the identity that Christians have as adopted children of God. Yes, we are all technically children of God because we all come from him, just like we are all children of Adam or children of Noah. But this concept of being an adopted child of God is different than in the biological or natural sense. This adoption that we are talking about today, that is referenced in Romans 8, comes through a spiritual agreement and a calling where the parent or the father, in this case God, specifically rescues those who are slaves to sin and makes them free through adoption. Romans 8:15 says, "The spirit that you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father." The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share with him in his suffering, in order that we may also share in his glory. For Christians, there's a saying that you will never know who you are until you know who your Father is. And there's definitely some truth to that. Why do many people who were adopted as young children later in life try to find out who their biological parents are? Well, there are several reasons. One reason is to know their origin so that they can learn their true identity about where they came from, and to know their biological DNA, which tells them specific things about them concerning their genetic makeup. Another reason might be to answer the question about why they are where they are, and to get some answers concerning the circumstances of their adoption, to know why they were abandoned and where they came from prior to being adopted. Some choose to reconnect with the parents, and many, even if they don't want to do that, will definitely try to find out if they have any other siblings so that they can connect with them. Besides getting answers to all those questions listed, there are some other potential benefits. Many of these deal with citizenship and passport rights. In other words, if you can prove that you were born in a certain place or to a certain person, then you can perhaps claim citizenship in a certain country. Other legal rights have to do with inheritances. There have been several instances of biological children having legal rights to estates and whatnot that are listed in the will or legally theirs by birthright. Some people are really resentful that they were abandoned, and they end up disliking their adopted parents. But most others realize that they were in a much worse position before they were adopted and could have had a totally wasted, useless life in their old condition compared to their new life as adopted children. Some even feel more special than biological children by virtue of the fact that their adoptive parents chose them as opposed to their natural children who the parents had no choice about raising. You should feel similarly special. God chose you. He called you specifically to answer his invitation to be adopted by him. And just like under Roman law, adopted children had the exact same legal rights as natural-born children. They were even less likely to be disinherited than natural-born children because one of the reasons for adoption was to provide a legal heir where there was none. The same benefits that are afforded to most adopted children are true for Christians. As a Christ follower, you are given a new name and a new family. You are now a saint, a Christian, a believer, whatever moniker you want to label yourself. You have a name. You are now part of a family where you can receive support and also give support. In short, you belong. I'm not talking about just to a large body of believers. I'm talking about to the local believers of like-minded Christians who meet and work and fellowship together and worship together as a local church. It's good to know your brothers and sisters and to know that you are all cut from the same cloth, who have the same Father, and you all share his attributes. This adoption also gives us certain rights. Romans 8:17 calls us co-heirs with Christ. Other translations say joint heirs. The point is that since Christ is the Son and Christians are considered children, then we share in the same benefits that Christ has with the Father. The child of a king is called a prince or a princess, and that is exactly who you are in God's sight. This relationship gives us certain benefits, one of which is a right to a place in His kingdom. God's building a house, a city, one that is unimaginable as far as its beauty and its nature. Being a child of God allows you residence there, not just in the short term, but for eternity. You have a guarantee of security and victory, a promise which no one else can afford you. One of the best things that you get from being a child of God is that you get access to Him. You can come to Him in prayer, you can worship Him, you can be in His presence. You can communicate with Him daily. You don't have to come into the throne room like a peasant with your head bowed low, mumbling some pious phrases and requests. You can come before God with confidence and talk with Him one-on-one as His child and as a co-heir with Christ. If you don't know how to talk to Him, you have access to the Holy Spirit who will help you to know what to say and how to say it. These rights and others aren't necessarily based on any merit of anything you've done, but they are given by the grace of God who adopted you in the first place. If you truly believed you were God's chosen adopted child, then you would act differently. You'd think differently. You'd live differently. Is it easy? As the old saying goes, if it were easy, then everybody would be doing it. There's plenty of drawbacks and negatives to being an adopted child of God, but these disadvantages pale in comparison to the benefits we just discussed. We share in the same glory as Christ, since He is our brother, but we also must endure the same suffering. The entire quote of Romans 8:17 and the next verse says, "Now if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in His suffering, in order that we may also share His glory. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." Where did Jesus suffer the most? I would argue it was in Gethsemane, in the garden, the night of His betrayal. He experienced unbelievable anxiety and anguish at the uncertainty of the physical and emotional pain that He knew He was about to endure. He experienced abandonment and aloneness as He came back from praying and He found His disciples asleep. He experienced betrayal by one of His own men who had been with Him for close to 2.5 years. And of course, shortly after, He suffers the humiliation and pain of being publicly executed. All of that seems like a lot, and hopefully none of us will have to experience such catastrophe in our own lives. But we do know that we must suffer similar fates, even if it's on a much smaller scale, if we are to share in the same glory that He got. But of course, as Paul said, the end will be worth it. Most inheritances are given out when the father dies. This is one instance where the benefactor actually receives all the blessings if he or she dies. Knowing this fact should give us great motivation to persevere to the end. I hope this message has profited you today. If you have not shared with your friends this YouTube channel yet, please do so that they too can tune in to the Itinerant Preacher. Until next time.